Somewhere in the city of Lagos, a modest church named House of Heavenly Grace Ministries rose from obscurity to fame overnight. The leaders, Pastor Isaiah and his wife, Prophetess Deborah, exuded charisma and spiritual authority. Pastor Isaiah's fiery sermons brought tears to congregants' eyes, while Prophetess Deborah's divine visions revealed secrets that amazed even skeptics. From healing the lame to predicting financial breakthroughs, the couple quickly became the talk of the city. People traveled from far and wide to witness the power of God in action. The small, tin-roofed building couldn't contain the crowds, prompting an expansion funded by generous donations from wealthy and desperate worshippers alike. However, behind the scenes of their flourishing ministry lay a chilling secret. Isaiah and Deborah were not vessels of divine power but of dark forces. Late at night, they visited a hidden shrine deep in the swampy outskirts of Lagos, where a mysterious herbalist named Baba Agba supplied them with potent charms and instructions. "We must grow the church," Deborah whispered one night as they prepared a new ritual. Isaiah nodded, his face hardened. "The more they believe, the more they give. We must do whatever it takes." The couple chanted incantations over a cauldron bubbling with dark concoctions. Baba Agba handed them a strange powder, instructing them to scatter it around the church to draw crowds. The next Sunday, the church overflowed. Every seat was taken, and people spilled onto the streets. Miracles became the order of the day, blind eyes were opened, barren women conceived, and jobless men found instant employment. But none of it was real, all were staged with paid actors, carefully orchestrated to convince the gullible masses. Among the churchgoers was Mama Ngozi, a widow who had sold her last plot of land to sow a seed of faith after Prophetess Deborah prophesied she would become a millionaire. There was also Connor, a struggling young man desperate for a job, who believed Pastor Isaiah's words that his breakthrough was imminent. Week after week, the faithful returned, bringing their offerings. Some sold their possessions, while others borrowed money to support God's work. The couple basked in the adulation, their wealth and influence growing. But not everyone was convinced. Chaik, a sharp-tongued journalist, attended the services out of curiosity. He noticed inconsistencies in the so-called miracles and quietly began to investigate. Meanwhile, in the quiet of their mansion, Isaiah and Deborah reveled in their success. "Soon, we will have a mega church," Deborah said with a satisfied smile. But Isaiah frowned. "We must ensure no one uncovers the truth." Little did they know, the truth was already stirring beneath the surface, and their web of lies was about to unravel. Prophetess Deborah stunned the congregation one Sunday by announcing a special prophecy. "This month," she declared, "someone here will rise from poverty to become a billionaire." Gasps and applause filled the air. The church erupted in excitement as she anointed individuals, asking them to sow sacrificial seeds. Deborah assured them that their sacrifices would unlock heaven's treasures. Many gave beyond their means, convinced that their breakthrough was nigh. But when nothing happened weeks later, murmurs of doubt began. Mama Ngozi, now penniless, started questioning the authenticity of the prophecies. She wasn't alone. Connor, who had spent his last savings on the offering, confronted Deborah during a service. "You said I'd get a job, but nothing has changed," he shouted. Deborah, unfazed, rebuked him, calling him faithless. The congregation rallied behind her, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Chaik, observing quietly, noted the growing unrest. He resolved to dig deeper. Chaik began trailing Isaiah and Deborah. His investigations led him to peculiar patterns, late-night meetings, suspicious transactions, and unexplained trips to the outskirts of Lagos. With each discovery, the picture grew darker. One night, Chaik followed them to Baba Agba's shrine. Hidden behind bushes, he watched in horror as the couple chanted incantations. He recorded everything on his phone, his hands trembling. This is big, he thought. But how could he expose them without putting himself in danger? The seeds of doubt grew into whispers among the congregation. Mama Ngozi's story spread, and Connor's confrontation emboldened others. The church's once unshakable unity began to crack. Isaiah and Deborah sensed the unease. "We must silence these doubts," Isaiah said. Deborah nodded, proposing a dramatic spectacle, a miracle so grand it would quash all suspicion. The whispers of doubt that crept through the house of Heavenly Grace Ministries were threatening to erupt into open rebellion. Sensing the congregation's unease, Isaiah and Deborah plotted a spectacle so miraculous that it would drown any doubts in a sea of fervent faith. "We will stage a resurrection," Deborah said one night, her voice firm. Isaiah looked hesitant but nodded. They had done many things, healings, prophecies, and visions, but bringing someone back from the dead was a new level of deceit. Baba Agba, the enigmatic herbalist who had fueled their rise, was called upon once more. "This is dangerous," Baba Agba warned. "But if you follow my instructions, it will work." He handed them a small vial of liquid and gave explicit instructions for its use. The next Sunday, the congregation packed the church, lured by rumors of a special service. Deborah, draped in white robes, announced solemnly, "Today, the power of God will be revealed as never before." The plan was in motion. A man, planted among the congregation, suddenly collapsed during worship, clutching his chest. Pandemonium ensued as the congregation screamed and cried out for help. Deborah stepped forward, her face serene. "Do not fear," she declared. "The God of this house is a God of life." Isaiah knelt by the man's side, anointing him with oil and shouting prayers. The tension in the room was palpable. Deborah, holding the vial Baba Agba had given them, poured a few drops onto the man's lips. Moments later, he gasped and sat upright, as though life had been breathed into him. The crowd erupted in praise. People fell to their knees, crying, shouting, and worshiping. The resurrection seemed to erase every doubt that had been whispered in the pews. Isaiah and Deborah exchanged a triumphant glance. Their plan had worked, or so they thought. Chike sat at the back of the church, his camera hidden in his bag. He had attended the service under the pretense of being a curious worshipper, but his real motive was to gather evidence. When the man resurrected, Chike's sharp eyes caught details others missed. He noticed Isaiah's subtle signal to a man near the back just before the collapse. He saw the man's seemingly lifeless body twitch before the anointing began. And when the crowd was caught up in the frenzy, Chike discreetly filmed it all. Later that evening, Chike reviewed his footage, his suspicions confirmed. He began piecing together the threads of his investigation, but he knew this was only the beginning. If he was going to expose Isaiah and Deborah, he needed something undeniable, proof so irrefutable that even their most loyal followers couldn't ignore it. The resurrection story spread like wildfire. Attendance at the church doubled, and donations poured in. But among the congregation, a few skeptics remained. Mama Ngozi was one of them. Her financial struggles persisted despite Deborah's promises, and the spectacle of the resurrection only deepened her doubts. One evening, she confided in Connor, who had become her ally in questioning the couple's authenticity. "I don't know what they are doing," she said, "but I know it's not from God." Connor nodded, his face grim. "We need to find out the truth," he said. Their growing suspicion led them to Chike, who was more than willing to share what he had discovered. Together, they formed a plan to expose the couple, even as Isaiah and Deborah prepared for their next big move. Isaiah and Deborah, basking in their renewed success, decided to host a week-long revival. Flyers blanketed Lagos, promising miracles, healing, and heavenly encounters. The first night drew thousands, filling the church to capacity and spilling into the surrounding streets. But behind the scenes, the couple's paranoia grew. Isaiah's dreams were haunted by shadowy figures, and Deborah felt a creeping unease. "Something isn't right," she whispered to Isaiah one night. He dismissed her fears, but the tension between them grew. Meanwhile, Chike, Mama Ngozi, and Connor worked tirelessly, gathering evidence and rallying others who shared their doubts. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the church to its core. The week-long revival, dubbed the Festival of Fire, marked the climax of Isaiah and Deborah's ministry. The church grounds transformed into a carnival of faith, with prayer booths, healing tents, and merchandise stores. Each night, Isaiah preached with fiery passion, and Deborah performed miracles that left the congregation awestruck. The final night was billed as the pinnacle of the event, a prophetic session where divine secrets would be revealed. In preparation, Isaiah and Deborah made another midnight visit to Baba Agba. The herbalist warned them, "You have reached the edge of what my power can do. If you go too far, the spirits may turn on you." Ignoring his warning, Deborah requested a stronger charm. Baba Agba reluctantly handed over a talisman wrapped in black cloth, warning them again, "This will protect you tonight, but only if you stay within the bounds." That evening, Isaiah stood before a crowd of thousands, his voice echoing through the air. Deborah, her hands outstretched, began calling people out by name, revealing personal details that left them trembling. But something strange happened. A young woman named Sot stepped forward, shaking uncontrollably. Deborah declared that she was possessed by an evil spirit and began a dramatic exorcism. As the crowd watched in stunned silence, Sot suddenly screamed, "You are the evil ones." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Isaiah attempted to control the situation, but Sot continued, "I saw you in my dream. You are using dark powers." The crowd, though initially skeptical, started murmuring. Doubts long suppressed began bubbling to the surface. Isaiah and Deborah dismissed Sot as a lunatic, but the incident left the congregation shaken. Even the most faithful began to question the source of the couple's power. Chike, hidden among the crowd, seized the moment. "This is it," he whispered to Connor and Moman Ngozi. They had come prepared, armed with recordings, testimonies, and a plan to reveal the truth. The trio approached the church elders, sharing their findings. The elders, torn between loyalty to Isaiah and the weight of the evidence, agreed to a public confrontation during the next service. The following Sunday, the church was packed as usual. Isaiah and Deborah, unaware of the brewing storm, began the service with their usual theatrics. Midway through, one of the elders stepped forward, his face grim. "We have something to address," he announced, silencing the room. Chike, Connor, and Moman Ngozi stepped forward, each holding pieces of evidence. Isaiah tried to interrupt, but the elder raised his hand. "Let them speak." Connor shared his story of broken promises, Moman Ngozi described her financial ruin, and Chike played the recordings of the couple's visits to Baba Agba. The congregation listened in stunned silence. When the video of the stage miracles played, chaos erupted. Cries of betrayal filled the air as people surged toward the pulpit. Isaiah and Deborah attempted to flee, but they were surrounded. The elders demanded an explanation. Isaiah, cornered, broke down. "It was all Deborah's idea," he shouted. Deborah glared at him, her composure cracking. "You were just as involved," she snapped. Their argument played out before the horrified congregation, their carefully constructed facade crumbling. Sot stepped forward, her voice steady. "I warned you. The spirits you used have turned against you. Your evil deeds will be your undoing." As if on cue, a loud crack echoed through the building. The roof began to shake, and the talisman Deborah had hidden beneath the altar caught fire. People screamed and fled as the church began to collapse. Isaiah and Deborah managed to escape the collapsing church, but their empire was gone. News of their exposure spread rapidly, and authorities launched an investigation. The couple went into hiding, but they couldn't escape the consequences of their actions. Baba Agba, furious that they had ignored his warnings, cursed them. "You will never know peace," he declared. Isaiah and Deborah's wealth vanished as their properties were seized. Betrayed by those they once trusted, they were left penniless and broken. The ruins of House of Heavenly Grace Ministries became a cautionary tale in Lagos. Chike's expose went viral, sparking a nationwide conversation about fake pastors and the exploitation of faith. Connor and Moman Ngozi found solace in smaller, more genuine communities of faith. Sot became a beacon of hope, using her story to warn others about the dangers of blind trust. Isaiah and Deborah, now forgotten and destitute, lived out their days in obscurity. Their downfall served as a reminder that deceit and greed can never triumph over truth and integrity. The story of House of Heavenly Grace Ministries became a modern parable, teaching generations that true faith cannot be bought, sold, or manipulated.